Hello, everyone. I'm Diva Carla of OrgasmicAlchemy.com, and I am so happy that you've joined me here for Pleasure, the Vital Nutrient. This evening, we're going to spend about half an hour together, and I'm going to introduce you to some of the reasons why pleasure is so important for women. And let me be specific. We're talking about sexual pleasure and orgasm. Um, and in the time that we have together, I'm only going to be able to just give you an introduction to this so important topic. So I'd like to tell you how you can get more. On Saturday, October 25th, I will be giving an hour-long workshop on pleasure, the vital nutrient, as part of the Feminine Rising New Moon retreat, and that is called Radical Nourishment: The Art of Falling in Love with Yourself. On the event page, we'll have a link posted where you can sign up for that after this broadcast is complete. So for now, I'd like to share with you briefly how this half hour is going to flow. First, I'm going to talk with you about orgasm and what is orgasm. I assure you, it is more than you may think. And then I'm going to talk about the 3 vital nutrients that orgasm and pleasure provide a woman, and the reason each one is so important in its unique way. And then I'll finish with some tips on how you can begin to open yourself to feeling more pleasure and becoming a more orgasmic woman. And before we begin the content, I'd like to share with you a little bit of my story. I am Diva Carla, and Diva is a title that I received through my initiation as a sacred sexuality healer and teacher. I came to this work through my own healing journey. I was raised a conservative Christian down south, and honestly was never taught anything about sex growing up. Nothing. And I even grew up on a farm and was the oldest of many children. And I was completely sheltered. It was considered really bad and sinful. And there was basically what I learned about sex was shame. And this had a very strong influence on my sexuality as an adult. And when I married, as it turns out, I am a multi-orgasmic woman. And yet I felt like there was something wrong with me because I did not have orgasm during intercourse. And after 25 years of thinking there's something wrong with you, and in fact not having a fulfilling sex life, I became very depressed and desperate and even rageful. And in due time, my marriage broke up, and I was in my fiery 40s, and I was determined to find out what I was missing. I wanted to know what was wrong with me and could I fix it, was how I thought of it at the time. I had never heard of anything like sexual healing. I didn't know what I didn't know. And yet I did find a priestess who led me and another group of women on into the path of our own bodies and knowing ourselves. It was a deep spiritual path as well as an erotic and sexual path. And through what I learned and discovering that there is nothing wrong with me, I just simply needed some information that I never had. I have become a guide and healer for other women so that you may know your sacred feminine power the connection, the uh, enjoyment, and the sense of wholeness that comes from owning this power and this pleasure that is your birthright and is a natural part of who you are. So let's talk about orgasm. What's orgasm? What most of us know or think is that orgasm is a spasm of pleasure that is produced in the body when you're stimulating the genitals through some sort of sexual activity. And that's like 1% of orgasm. Orgasm is energy. Orgasm is energy that is generated within the body and moves through the body and expands outward beyond the body. And we are designed, male and female, with particular parts of our bodies that have special tissues and structures and nerve endings that focus the physical expression of pleasure in our bodies. But we can actually feel sexual pleasure and orgasmic pleasure throughout our whole body. In fact, people who are disabled or have injuries, like spinal injuries, can redirect these pathways to become orgasmic, even if the pathways to the genitals have been damaged. We are designed for this. It's how we're made. It is part of our divine plan that we shall experience this kind of pleasure. And what I'm going to share with you today will help you understand some of the reasons why it's so important. Just a moment. Okay. I want to make sure I don't leave anything out of this. Thank you. Women are uniquely designed for an experience of transcendental orgasm, the orgasm that fills the whole body and the aura and makes this connection with the soul and with the earth and with spirit. It is in our design, our neurology, and in our brains, and it's also in our energy pattern as human beings, as female-bodied human beings, that we experience orgasm as an expansive and a very deep experience. I call it oceanic and galactic, deep and expansive. And it's really important for women to have that kind of orgasmic experience at least some of the time. If we don't get this kind of deep, fulfilling orgasm enough, and enough may be individual, but sometimes we must have it like that, then we are not able to live and function and express ourselves in our lives at an optimum level. Orgasm is not just about sex, it is about whole life. So let's talk a little bit about those 3 vital nutrients that go with orgasm, that orgasm produces. They are dopamine, opioids, and oxytocin. These are neurotransmitters that are produced in the brain and nervous system, and they particularly affect the brain. And they are released during pleasure activities, things that bring us pleasure as human creatures, animals, and they are produced in great amounts in orgasm. in orgasm, these these neurotransmitters, these vital nutrients, as I call them, flood the brain, and that's really important for us to have that flooding experience, as I will show in a few minutes. So let's talk about these three these three nutrients. The first one is dopamine, and dopamine is the confidence neurotransmitter. Women receive when they have orgasm and can feel that deep connection from between the pelvis and the brain that expands even beyond the body. Their brain floods with dopamine, and this gives them the sense of, I know who I am. I can handle whatever life brings to me. I am able to solve problems. I am able to walk in a feminine and powerful way. The dopamine unleashes creativity. It helps us make intellectual connections when we've got lots of, well, it could be information that's coming towards us, or it could simply be the ideas that we are generating in our own minds. That is creativity. So dopamine helps us make connections, and then it also helps us focus so that we can take all these pieces, whether it's a problem to solve, a challenge to meet, the multitasking that women are supposedly famous for doing, but it feels like we're multitasking because we are moving through things very quickly, handling children and food and relationships and ideas and planning and executing. We seem to be doing things all at once. And we are better able to do that if we have a regular dose of dopamine flooding our brains. Now, there are lots of ways that we can get dopamine other than sex. One is shopping. It's a cliche, but honestly, something about the sensual experience of shopping and a bit of the adrenaline rush and pleasure that many of us get from shopping is actually builds up dopamine. The fact that it also can be social and that we're in touch with desire and we're in touch with getting what we want. All of these things, shopping, sex, desire, asking for what we want and getting it. There's a connection there. Shopping is a stand-in for sex. And for some of us, well, it depends on where. I'm not a great shopper myself. I think I would say spending time in nature and seeking new experiences, or perhaps going to an art gallery or experiencing art through film, that would be my equivalent to shopping. So these kinds of things are feeding us dopamine. Extreme exercise, heavy, intense exercise really gives us a dopamine boost. So the runner's high is dopamine. And people who like extreme sports, climbing and skiing and triathlons, they're getting the dopamine rush. And that's really very good, but there are risks of injury, risks of other imbalances. And then there's another way of getting dopamine, and that is drugs like cocaine. That's where that high comes from, super intense dopamine rush. So why not choose sex? And if the orgasms that you're having or the sexual experiences you're having are not feeding you enough of that vital nutrient, then I encourage you to take some steps to learn how to increase the ability of your body to produce dopamine and have better orgasms. Now, the other group of nutrients that orgasm floods the brain with, and pleasure. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the difference, the distinction between pleasure and orgasm. But let's talk about the nutrient opioids. Opioids are the endorphins, the natural morphine-like substances that our body produces. And they fill in their little keys inside our brain that receive those substances. And these are substances that do two things. One, they relieve pain. This could be, in some cases, by being pain blockers. And in other cases, they fit into the keys in our brain that stimulate pleasure or a relaxation and an opening to pleasure. So they reduce pain and enhance the ability to feel pleasure. And that's all happening on a brain level. And any kind of pleasure in the body, any kind of sensual pleasure through our five senses increases opioids to our brain and gives us endorphins, makes us feel good, makes us high. And some of us, this is, our intellect, our minds turn us on. They make us feel good. We get a lot of pleasure from reading, creating, thinking, conversation, research and study, intellectual pursuit. And I want to make the distinction between pleasure that is embodied, that we are feeling inside of our bodies, and through our bodies, sensual pleasure that comes through eyes, sight, taste, smell, hearing, touch, and perhaps some of these other senses that are coming beyond our five senses. And in fact, orgasm can awaken those senses that could be psychic or spiritual or intuitive. Orgasm increases intuition. So any kind of pleasure that may not be sexual, but I want to invite you to consider that it is erotic. Erotic pleasure is about desiring and fulfilling. It is an energy. It's not a mental thing. It's an energetic opening that sends out a vibration of desire and opens a channel to receive love and the specific things that we desire. It is life force. It is a divine and spiritual energy. And it is operating at a very high level when we're engaged in sexual pleasure. And when we are taking that sexual pleasure all the way to a level of orgasm. And yet we are building and increasing our mental brain opioids anytime that we are indulging in what brings us pleasure. A lovely meal, chocolate, touch, petting our cats, playing with our dog, hugging our children. And again, in orgasm, there is that flood, and this is true for men and women, flooding the brain with pleasure chemicals that can actually help relieve pain. The headache that used to stop us from having, not tonight, dear, it would have been helped by orgasm. And it's quite possible that the reason that headache was a stop is that orgasm was not happening. And I'll go into that a little bit more at the retreat when we have more time. The reasons why it's really important, what happens if orgasm doesn't happen in the sexual experience. And now I want to make sure I get to the final nutrient, which is oxytocin. Oxytocin is the connection nutrient. It is the connection hormone. It makes us feel loved, and it makes us fall in love. A lot of times the reason women fall in love with the men or people they have sex with is because so much oxytocin was generated. And oxytocin, men experience oxytocin too, and it's also a vital nutrient for them. But there are two basic differences about how oxytocin works for men and women, and that's important for couples in a relationship to understand. Men need the oxytocin release from sex in order to feel connection. And women need connection from oxytocin and all the things that flood her body with oxytocin in order to want and open to sex. So men need sex and orgasm and pleasure in order to generate that connection, oxytocin at work. Women need to have that oxytocin level already high in order to open up to sex. And our bodies really are designed around that flow of energy. So how can we get oxytocin especially since we need it to start? Well, that is really what foreplay is about, and foreplay starts way before you get to genitals. It starts at the outer edges. It starts in how we feel about the person we're with, and whether or not how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the relationship. But in particular, in a physical way, oxytocin is generated through touch, through breath, through substances like chocolate, through the atmosphere and environment of the space when we're expecting to have sex, the beautiful, candlelight, romance, all of this eye gazing, looking into your lover's eyes, these things all build up oxytocin. And women need to pay very close attention to that phase of lovemaking and give it the time and attention it requires in order to be able to fully connect and feel safe, aroused, and ready to receive pleasure and to expand into orgasm. I would like to, and this other little thing I'd like to mention. Oxytocin is also the hormone that opens up the uterus so that a child can be born. And it is the hormone that is activated when mothers are nursing. And so babies and mothers have this strong oxytocin connection. And sometimes papas can feel left out of that. The mother, from her connection with her child, is getting many of her oxytocin needs met. So being aware of that is important for couples when they're in that phase where mother is so bonded with the baby. And give papa a chance to bond with the baby and the mother too. So let's talk in the time that we have left about some of the ways you can begin to prepare. And for women, one of the main ways is to keep those levels of oxytocin on up. Do not let yourself get oxytocin depleted. And when time comes to have sex, you will be much more open and available, and perhaps even suggesting sex, which your lovers will usually enjoy very much, that it was your idea. So here are some very simple ways, and there will be more offered in the workshop on October 25th. One is breath, knowing how to breathe. And this is deep, full-bodied breathing. And there are many patterns to breath that move the energy and help us open up to feeling sexual pleasure. But one very simple one is a deep connected breath where we open the belly. I'm going to come back to that and close by teaching you that breath. That may mean that we go just a few minutes over. I think I will I'm not sure if I have time to go over since I've never done this before. So if I don't get to it, I will definitely teach it in the workshop. The other thing that builds oxytocin is touch. So touch yourself, give yourself a hug, um, hand massage. If you're feeling stressed and maybe disconnected from other people around you or from yourself, you can simply massage your hand while breathing, and you can come into that place of connection. Hair brushing. Brush your own hair. Have your child or your partner brush your hair. Go to the hairdresser more often. Get massages from a professional massage therapist more frequently. Anything that involves your whole body, like swimming or yoga, can build oxytocin. And knitting. How about this, knitters? The rhythmic hand movements of knitting and the sensual experience of yarn can build up your oxytocin level and help you prepare for sex. How's that? Yarn shops, take note. You want to put that in your advertising? So those are some very simple ways that you can integrate preparation for sensuality and pleasure in your daily life. And I urge you to make a priority of it. So to remind you, on October 25th, to sign up, you can go to the event page and see the link to sign up for and enroll in the retreat, which is Radical Nourishment, the secret art of loving yourself. And I have enjoyed being with you so very much. And I am Diva Carla of OrgasmicAlchemy.com.